Hey, it's A Humble Collector here. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the 4-panel death card of Karl Eder. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So panels 1 and 4 in this case are blank except for the Iron Cross on panel 1. And moving to the interior, panel 2 here, we have this really cool photo of Karl. It's taken outside of a very large and ornate set of doors. Possibly he's from a more well-off family. This definitely looks like it was taken out on the front porch. Weirdly, it kind of reminds me of like the photos you take of a kid on the first day of school, you know, like outside the house, all dressed up. Just kind of an odd thought I had while I was, researching this card. But at the very bottom of the first page here, it says, "It is better to die in war than to let the fatherland perish." And moving to panel 3, in memory of Mr. Karl Eder, Obergefreiter in an Infantry Regiment, homeowner son of the Bauer's house in Teuflau number 21 in the parish of Ondorf, who died a heroic death for the Führer and fatherland on the 22nd of September 1941 at the age of 27, during a reconnaissance operation near Kuliabivka in Russia. Now, interestingly, the farmhouse there, the Bauer's house, which is the Bach farmhouse, I actually found it. Weirdly enough, for these cards for people from Austria, they have the actual address on there. And recently, as I was researching cards, I decided to actually take a stab at trying to find some of these houses. And I found this one, so I can actually put a picture of it up here on screen. That's a property that Karl's family owned and presumably farmed or rented out. So kind of an odd note there. Now, I did actually find a casualty record for Karl. He was born on October 27th, 1914, and was a member of the 6th Company of Infantry Regiment 133, which was part of the 45th Infantry Division. And he would be killed by a headshot at Kuliabivka, which is east of Kyiv, and matches up with the town noted on the card here. Now, I do actually have a unit history for the 45th Infantry Division, which in this case is Mein Weg mit der 45th Infantry Division, and a list of all their battle locations here. But oddly, this is actually written by the division's chaplain, a Dr. Rudolf Geschopf of the Order of St. Benedict. So very unusual for a unit history from one of these divisions. And this divisional history actually does talk about what was going on at the time of Karl's death. Now, he was killed the first day of combat operations around Yahotyn, where the 45th was attacked while they were still in the process of deploying. So they were supposed to be deploying for a combat operation. They got to the area, and before they could really get set up, the Soviets counterattacked them. And he would be killed at the northwest tip of the lake, which is actually mentioned in the combat account. So I will go ahead and read that now. Immediately after receiving the new deployment order, the division formed a rapid advance detachment from the 3rd Battalion of Infantry Regiment 133, motorized units of Pioneer Battalion 81, and 2 companies of Panzerjägerabteilung 45, which were loaded onto trucks. This detachment was able to assume the first blocking tasks in the ordered area just a few hours later. The rest of the division arrived in the Yahotyn area the following day, on September 21st, built a strong bridgehead, and prepared to carry its attack westward into the enemy's movements. However, the Russians got there first and attempted an incredibly rapid and difficult breakthrough to the east in the early morning of September 22nd, before our deployment was even completed. Our right wing, the 1st Battalion of Infantry Regiment 133, experienced the first force of the blow with a mass deployment of men, the likes of which had been unknown until then. A cavalry charge, ridden with insane recklessness against our furious machine gun fire, formed the introduction. As they galloped past, the sharp-edged weapons of the wild cavalcade struck some of our men with such force that their heads split right through their steel helmets. Smaller parts of a squadron that had managed to break through reached the northwest tip of Lake Yahotyn and could only be destroyed near the divisional command post. Immediately after the attack, a densely massed infantry attack followed in 3 waves with heavy artillery support. To further increase the pressure, no fewer than 4 armored trains and 3 fully occupied transport trains drove toward our bridgehead at the same time. Fortunately, our engineers had already thoroughly blown up the railway line, so that the trains had to stop. Then, the enemy simply began to unload in the open field, directly in front of our lines, and, on both sides of the railway embankment, to push forward and attack in disorganized, dense groups on the Pereyaslavskaya station, where the 130th Infantry Regiment, artillery units, and Panzerjägerabteilung 652, subordinate to the division, had taken up their positions. Our men peppered these advancing enemy groups with artillery, anti-tank guns, machine guns, and all infantry weapons, firing at full throttle, and these received such a murderous reception that the dead piled up in unimaginable numbers along the railway embankment. Uniformed women were among the fallen. Of the entire train crew, apart from a few prisoners, no one reached our lines. Meanwhile, the 44th Division began to attack the enemy from the north, northwest of our bridgehead. The resulting masses placed renewed pressure on our already struggling right wing, and at times seriously threatened to overrun the positions. Our men were simply unable to fire everywhere. Only gradually, partly in bitter close combat, did we succeed in preventing a dangerous breakthrough. We also suffered considerable losses. Among others, the battalion commander of the 1st Battalion of Infantry Regiment 133, Captain Gersmeyer, was killed by a direct artillery hit on his command post. To our left, the 134th Infantry Division attempted to push into the enemy area from the southeast during the course of the afternoon. While the first day of the operation at Yahotyn was filled with heavy defensive fighting for our troops, the division began its previously planned attack to the west the next day, September 23rd. Progress was surprisingly good, and the eastern part of Beresange was reached before mid-morning. The troops captured over 1,000 prisoners and an incalculable amount of booty from the armored and transport trains destroyed the day before, including weapons, ammunition, provisions, 35 guns, and vehicles of all kinds. In the afternoon, the left wing of the division swung southwest, and, primarily with the 135th Infantry Division, pushed into the large wooded area that stretched south of Beresange to the Trubiesh River. Here, the enemy once again appeared so strong that any further penetration had to be stopped for the time being. So what a fascinating account of combat there. And this is kind of what I find really interesting about the early part of the fighting on the Eastern Front, is it just seems to be really crazy. The fact that you have this German unit that gets here, they're getting ready for an attack, and all of a sudden they're getting charged by cavalry. There's multiple armored trains steaming toward their positions. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that it's kind of hard to believe really even happened. And it's interesting to note here that Karl was killed on the northwest tip of the lake, and that's actually specifically mentioned that a squadron of cavalry managed to break through to that area. And given the fact that his cause of death here is noted as a headshot, and we also get the references to Soviet cavalry sabers literally cutting through men's helmets as they struck down at them, I can't help but wonder if that might have been what happened to Karl. Now, usually the causes of death in these casualty records I tend to view as pretty accurate, so it's impossible to say for sure, but it seems like it might be a possibility. And of course, we also see that a battalion commander in his regiment, a Captain Gersmeyer, is also killed. So clearly his regiment in particular took very heavy losses during the fighting on this day. And I do actually have a few other cards for members of the division. Josef Radelsgruber was a Gefreiter in the 5th Company of Infantry Regiment 133 and died of dysentery in Yaroslav, Poland on October 16, 1939. Karl Mongelberger was a Gefreiter in the 7th Company of Infantry Regiment 135 and was killed by a headshot at Pokrovskoye, Russia on February 5, 1942. And finally, Josef Metz, who was a Schütze in the 4th Company of Feld Ersatz Battalion 98, was killed by shrapnel to the temple at Roslavl, Russia on February 22, 1942. And moving to the bottom of the card here, far, far from my homeland, in distant enemy territory, I died as a brave warrior, as a hero of my fatherland. When duty called me, my heart did not remain still. I walked with firm steps until I reached my goal. There were many battles, many a man died. It saddened me too. The bullets hit their target. Oh, do not weep, my dears. You know where I am now. With many companions, I went to heaven. There you will find me, transfigured and happy. So leave your worries for me in God's hands. So yeah, what a fascinating card. Between what we learned in the unit history there to the photograph that we have here, and actually a bit of a poem that's different than what we normally get, being able to find where his house was on the map. Really a lot more information than we normally get, and it really helps to tie the card together and tell more of the full story. So yeah, overall, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please leave a comment down below. Love hearing from you. Thank you all for watching. Happy collecting, and I will see you all again very soon.